Hello YouTube, welcome back to Nutkin Farm. Well, this looks nice and orderly, doesn't it? Rows of macadamia trees in the late spring. A couple of early nuts on, as you can see here. Not as many as I hoped, and it's one of those times when agronomists tell you don't look up because you can't really see what kind of crop you've got. The nuts, if any, are really a little bit too small to see towards the tops of the trees. From what I'm seeing, I'm not really happy with the nut set. Look, not that it matters that much anyway, given that this year's going to be a little bit of a washout for nuts anyway in terms of the price we get for them. But, you know, you look after your orchard and this is looking all right, and it's kind of fun to be here. But this neatly mowed facade betrays what hasn't yet been mowed up here. And that's what I've been working on today. And being the first mow of spring, you know, a lot of agronomists say, look, don't mow until it's closer to harvest time. But if I let this get too far out of control, it just goes crazy, this grass. And this Soteria cattle grass basically needs 2 passes to cut it, even in its current state. So I wouldn't want it getting any taller than that. And yes, there are flowering weeds and other things that are good for the bees, but I just can't afford to manage it by letting it grow too wild. And that brings me to the point of this video. One of my long-term subscribers, Golden Reward, I don't know if it's a he or a she, but Golden Reward is always quick to come up with constructive suggestions, questions, really thoughtful comments, clearly based on a good looking at the videos and thinking about the issues that I raise in them. And so I really love the contributions he or she makes. One of the ones from a few weeks ago was just a simple query that, you know, why couldn't you run a few dozen sheep in your orchard so that they can eat the grass, keep it down for you, give you free manure, and have sort of complementary agriculture? And it's a question I asked when I was looking at buying a farm. I thought, well, you know, it's obvious, isn't it? You know, you need the grass cut, so why mow when you've got animals that can do it for you? And you can end up running 2 things at once and having sheep or cattle or horses or whatever in your orchard. And I was reminded by one of my best friends who's just asked me the same question, said, surely there must be an easier way. Look, unfortunately there isn't, and the answer's something that I can't give in that much brevity. You've got to go into it a bit. There are hygiene rules that the nut processors enforce in Australia anyway that require you not to have livestock in your orchard for 3 months before any harvest period. Now, the reason for that is that fresh manures, as opposed to compost manures, can contain a lot of pathogens. Obviously, nuts drop in the cow poop or whatever else, and you're in all sorts of trouble with, you know, sort of hygiene and other things potentially getting into nuts. So you can see why the rule is there, and, you know, it has to be more or less enforced. Now, I get wallabies and things running through here all the time, and you can't do anything about them. But it's the livestock in particular that these rules pick on. So if you can't run livestock for 3 months before a harvest period, and your harvest period starts in, say, late February and finishes in about August, and, you know, they can go longer than that, harvest periods, depending on what you've got. You've only really got September and October to run livestock. And, of course, as a business model, you'd have to keep the livestock elsewhere for, you know, 10 out of 12 months of the year. So it's not a viable business model to rely on 2 months of grazing from animals that have to be kept elsewhere the rest of the time. Also, in those months, September, October, they're 2 of the months when you'd be spraying, and you can't really have spray happening with livestock running around. Not all your choices of spray would be harmful to livestock these days, but you certainly don't want to do it while you know, while they're under the trees, and, you know, spray is dripping obviously onto the grass that they'd be feeding on. But there are other reasons not to have livestock, even if you didn't have the hygiene reasons and that sort of thing. There's other reasons not to have livestock in your farm. One of them is soil compaction, and it's something that applies more to cows and horses than it would to sheep, which are fairly small-footed animals. Soil compaction is a real issue in that constant treading by cows in an orchard will pack down the soil around the trees and make it less able to absorb moisture and nutrients, even the ones that the cows are giving you. But cows, like other four-legged mammals and like all mammals, have itches, and itches need to be scratched. One of the best places to scratch your itch, if you're a four-legged animal, is up against a tree. And cows can do that in a fairly rough way, in that they can rub off bark. And when you do that, you're taking away a very concentrated source of nutrients that flow up the tree towards the leaves. Most of that happens just under the bark level. So, too much rubbing by cows and you'll basically ringbark trees and or worse. And unfortunately, when it comes to the worse, I have something to show you, because I've had neighbouring cows rove in here. Naturally, the farmer has received expressions of my lack of appreciation, but the main leader in this tree has basically been beaten off by a cow trying to rub itself, possibly on the belly, and it's just broken off entirely. There's some other branches there that may grow back. Here we've got an even worse example. All we've got left is the trunk. The entire top has been broken off. Now it's trying to grow back, but I can't tell whether that's above or below the graft. There's definitely some below the graft. I don't know if I could let that grow back, whether it'll be a viable tree. And this little clump of weeds here hides a completely broken off tree that, as far as I can see, is oh no, there's some basal growth, but that's definitely below the graft. That's not going to do me any good. And these are, sad losses for me. These were 2-and-a-bit-year-old trees, and in theory, they're, like the ones you see down there, they'd be ready for a crop next year. And look, quite a loss. But it's a good reason why you wouldn't want to deliberately run cattle in your own orchard where there are baby trees around, and even adult trees. So that's the reason, Golden, why, despite your question being a very, very logical one, and me having had the same one myself, this is why the macadamias aren't really amenable to this complementary agriculture with livestock. I think if they could be done at the edge of viability, you could do it with strong adult trees, perhaps that cropped very, very late, and then you might be able to have cattle in the orchard up until about April. And in that period, sort of December through to April, for example, cattle would be very useful in keeping rampant grass growth down. But again, these cattle have to have somewhere else to live, and fencing and other issues then come into what you might do on a macadamia orchard. Most of our orchards do have some sort of fences, particularly the ones that used to be cattle farms, but my fences are not the kind that would keep cattle in, as you can see. So there's the answer to a very, very frequently asked question, and I hope you find the answer satisfactory. I'm going to get back to mowing now. I've been lent a very powerful mower that's doing a great job on this grass, and I hope to get it all beat before the next rain. I'll be in touch soon though, and thank you for listening. Bye for now.